You changed me from the lead vocalist to. Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good to have you here. Good to have you here in our nation building theater at the Conclave Tribe. Pleasure to have everyone, and then welcome back again. I believe this is your second time, and also for you, Mr. Kingsley. So I would just like for us to kind of go around very quickly, make a quick introduction, and we go into our conversation for today. So let's start with you, Mr. Taiwo.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Taiwo Ekunjobi. I'm a filmmaker. Occasionally, I comment on politics, culture, and social events generally. And I'm glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. Good to have you. And I would have said a round of applause, but the online audience can do that here. So, Mr. Kingsley, let's get to know you and what you do.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kingsley Oka. I work in media and communications. An unrepentant believer in Nigeria, and its greatness. I continue to preach that gospel wherever I go. So it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and definitely the ideal person to have during a nation building theater conversation. So over to you, Mrs. Tolulope.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tolulope Idiakwa. I am an architect and someone who's extremely passionate about this country. Always have been. So I love to join into conversations, come into conversations where we're talking about nation building. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, pleasure to have all three of you here. And my name is Isabel Ololade. I am a software developer with a lot of tendency to become an activist, and what you would call a freedom fighter, But then it's really important to me that Nigeria is what Nigeria ought to be, because what I would say foreign media and most people who are not even Nigerians know about Nigeria is nothing like what Nigeria truly is. And I strongly believe that the only way we can begin to portray Nigeria, the way Nigeria ought to be, is that there is a consciousness, that there has to be a consciousness common to each and every one of us, which is why conversations like this are very important, and we hope that everyone that needs to hear will hear. And so very quickly, we are going to be going into our conversation for today. And of course, it might sound cliche, but today we're going to be talking about leadership. And if we are talking about leadership of all topics, that means there is probably, something or somehow or somewhere where people don't necessarily have a clear understanding of what this concept is. Because I believe that, throughout our lives, you would have, gotten a hold of someone who has a flawed definition of leadership, whether at work, even in church, or different places where you find yourself, where they believe leadership is this or that. So we want to be talking about leadership, clarifying what leadership means, debunking whatever myth or whatever you might have around leadership, and basically helping our audience or whoever is listening to come to that place where they understand truly what leadership is about, and they also know if or whether they can be leaders. And we will definitely be able to establish that during the course of our conversation. But I'd like for us to start just with the, more like a standard procedure. Let's define leadership. And I would like for Mr. Taiwo to just give that a shot.
Thank you very much. I think leadership, we want to look into the textbooks and dictionary and pull out the meaning. But to me, leadership to me is an act of taking responsibility. And anybody who is willing to look at a situation or a context and take the responsibility of leading others, that's repeating the word, of looking into that context or situation and providing some form of guidance or understanding or clarity. I believe that person is already performing the act of leadership. So it's primarily centered around taking responsibility. That's leadership to me.
Okay, so you emphasize so much on the word responsibility, but then at what point did you mention the word position or appointment, or an election.
Yeah, so it's never about those things. I think leadership, one can lead a family as well as lead a country, but it's about the act of taking responsibility. And some of the things that we need to realize in our generation that you don't need to be elected to be a leader. You take responsibility to clean your house. You take responsibility to do something right on the street. That's you expressing leadership. And those are the kind of values that when people get into offices, that's what we are looking for. That's what people look for. How do we know somebody is a leader? If you take responsibility in a smaller thing or in a community, that's how you know who a leader is. Okay. Maybe you are in a neighborhood and it's dirty and you take up the work of cleaning it every time. People will say, oh, that's a leader in the making already. So it's ideally never about the position, it's ideally never about politics. Politics, those are things you do that allows you to platform those skills. Office can be a way to platform those skills. A family can be. But primarily, it's about responsibility.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo. So I would like to just pass on to Mr. Kingsley very quickly. So he said, and I agree, of course, leadership is primarily about responsibility. But then, is it possible for you to embrace leadership without a clear sense of responsibility? And basically embracing leadership without a clear sense of responsibility, because we've seen leaders that people would perceive to be irresponsible. So do you think the mismatch is in the fact that what the leader chooses to be responsible for is not what the people expect him to be responsible for?
Thank you very much. I think that, obviously, I agree with the definition of leadership. And then coming to your question now, a significant part of leadership is responsibility, right? But also influence. And then responsibility really is ownership. So it's not necessarily, and I think, and again, because for the context of this conversation we're having, I know that we're speaking largely towards political government leadership as against corporate leadership, because leadership applies in different spheres or spaces, right? In our daily lives, in your family, you did leader, whatnot. So just clarifying that context. Now, what happens when you get to that space of government and leadership is a group of people elect someone to be the forerunner or pretty much the one championing the cause of the people, right? And essentially, the very idea that this person is there somewhat represents that the people have entrusted that common belief or interest to this person or these people to run. So in light of that, it's very rare. Of course, its majority carries the vote. So you might find people who may not particularly find or see this individual to be the best person to represent their interest. But at the end of the day, I don't think that our interests are that dissimilar. Everybody, by and large, wants the same thing. You want a system that functions. You want a country that recognizes you and enables you to be the best that you can be, provides for you, at least the basic amenities, infrastructure, things like that, right? So up until that point, it's, quite, I don't want to say impossible, but it's just rare to say that, a leader can not be, or can hold a different responsibility different from what the people, define or indicate responsibility to be. So I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kingsley. And, I would just go over to Mrs. Tolulope because I want to ask a follow-up question on that. So I would like to ask, because we are trying to, as much as possible, just define leadership on a neutral front, like, before, politics, before anything. Because as a matter of fact, I don't think politics is the parent to leadership. Leadership is the parent to politics. It's the other way around. Politics is actually a child of, the concept of leadership. So meaning, So I want to speak to, I want you to speak to, is leadership absolute in the sense that regardless of wherever you find yourself, whether it is in the political space or it's in a corporate world or just you volunteering somewhere, in northern Nigeria or wherever, is leadership absolute in the sense that the qualities remain the same regardless of the expression? I think you need to say that again. Okay.
I don't believe that leadership is absolute in that sense. Every context in which you are called to serve or in which you see yourself leading will determine the kind of, should I say, characteristics and strengths in which you pull to that environment. You might be called into a place where people are energetic or they are difficult to lead. Then you know that you have to be stern, you have to be firm. It has to be a sort of leadership that is, should I say, guarded by tough love. Do you see? And there might be other situations where you have people who are fragile, who are emotional, who are, are soft. Then you know that you have to tone it down. There are times when you are called to lead people who do not even know anything. The way you lead, teachers are leaders. The way you lead children, you are teaching it in the kindergarten, is different from the way you lead when you even get to secondary school, and just a few years after that, or when you get to university, or when you now get to National Assembly, or when you get to Ekiti State, for example. They say that our people are very difficult. Do you see? I'm stubborn. So it's not one size fits all. The environment and the context in which you find yourself will always determine the characters and the strength that has to be in the forefront of the people you are leading.
Okay, so thank you very much. So is it the leadership quality that needs to change or the expression? Because
it's the expression
that needs to change.
It's the expression that needs to change. There are core things that a leader must have. Do you see? He said something which I agree, both of them said the same thing, and that's where I would have defined leadership, which is responsibility. Someone takes responsibility. You have to be responsible. You have to be competent for it. You have to know what you are doing. You have to be able to speak the language of the people you are leading. And I don't mean Yoruba outside.
Yeah.
You know the way they like to be communicated with. You know the way they behave. You know the system that you are representing for them. You have to have that. You have to be a good communicator, which is also tying back to what I said about the language. You have to have integrity, which I find is something really, really lacking. And that is one of the core things or core fundamentals of leadership. So you have to have integrity. You have to care for the people you are representing, because leaders are representing someone for a system or against a system. So you have to care for the people you are representing or you claim you are representing. So all those core, should I say, skills or giftings have to, it's uniform or it's fundamental across all stratas of leadership. You have to be able to have that. But the way you now express those things and actually want to define.
Okay, thank you, and that makes a lot of sense. So, I would like for Mr. Kingsley to, to take this. So, does that mean the loyalty of a leader is not to the people, but to the ideal that he is pursuing? Because those are two different things, right? So where exactly does the loyalty of, when you talk about integrity, so is the integrity of the leader towards the goal, the vision, or the mission, whatever is pursuing, or towards the people?
Well, yes, and I say this,
yes to which one? Towards the people or towards the
goal? But I also don't want to separate the goal from the people, and that's what I was saying when I spoke earlier, that it's hard not to imagine that by and large we all want the same things. Want better roads, better hospitals, better opportunities, education, better living conditions across board. So essentially, I think that is common, to most of us, if not all of us. And so yes, the leader has to be aligned with that vision and that goal. Now, in terms of, so I really don't want to distinguish or disintegrate the goal from the people, because it is the people that elect the leader. So
Do they know what they are doing?
so I really don't want to, disintegrate the two, right? But just marrying it to what, because I don't think that the challenge really has been that disconnect between people and goals. It's really what she spoke about, which is having the competence and also the integrity, because at the end of the day, and I think it's also just having that notion that, maybe in this part, we just make that function a bit over, glamorous, in the sense that we lose sight of the fact that it's really more about service to the people than it is about, aggrandizing oneself, So I think that is lost on a lot of people, in this part, and that's probably what we need to correct. Because think about it, if you're leading yourself or you're leading your family, it's less about you, it's more about the people that you're leading, and so that's the same mindset that should carry on, at that level, because it's the same thing, it's just a scale that's different, and then of course the people, there's now diversity, but at the end of the day, it's the same things that we all want, regardless of whether you're outside Yoruba or Igbo or any other tribe that we have in Nigeria. It's the same basic things.
Okay. Mr. Taiwo, do you agree that we actually all want the same thing? And because, and maybe just to think about Nigeria for a bit, and of course this is not more like, this is leadership in the purest form, not necessarily political. But when you hear people talk, it doesn't seem like we all want the same thing. There are those who think, what they want is just, another flag. And there are those who think, what they want is, we must stay locked together, we must be interlocked. And, so do we actually all want the same thing, And I will ask a follow-up question. So I would like for you to just do like a yes or no. Do we all want the same thing? And if we all want the same thing, if we don't want the same thing rather, then what's really the place of a leader? Particularly when it comes to taking responsibility and inspiring people to actually maybe validate the thesis that we all want the same thing. And we are all just defining it differently.
It's difficult to give a yes or no. Because fundamentally, human beings want the same thing, most human beings. But the reason why we have political structure and civic structure is that sometimes we need to rank those things. And people rank certain things higher than some things. And so because of that particular human impulse to rank things differently, then politics was created as a way to help us then choose and decide what are the things that I want and who can give me those things better. Even though fundamentally we want to get to the same place, but we rank things differently. So for example, somebody wants state police. Somebody feels that's not what I need. I need the economy to work. We all want the country to work, but we just rank those situations differently. And because of that, politics gives us a chance to then go and test how many people want this. Then we produce that leadership for the most amount of people in that system, if it's democratic. If it's not democratic, then we can have where the leader creates division and plugs in the entire country into it. But if it's a democratic practice, the human beings have the right to rank what they need and want, and then use political processes to acquire those things.
Okay. So does the vision come from the leader or come from the people?
The vision comes from the people.
Okay.
In the sense that these needs are already living in the shared consciousness of the people. Since 1999, the Nigerian people have wanted some things, and we all know those things. And those things reside in us. It's in desire to fix those things that we create political organizations that say, okay, we want to create an organization to produce this particular part of the vision for us. PDP will say that power to the people, that's what they want to do. So as people who want power to report to people, which is quite strange because textbook says that power is already within the people, but they want to give power to the people, which which is okay, fine. So they then create that kind of platform that can help people to acquire those things. And then another group comes and says, we want to create change. People who like change will plug in into that particular thing. Change from what maybe sometimes
We like the growth graph.
is exactly sometimes not defined. And then some people come and say, we want what is it?
Labor.
Yeah. So sometimes they come and say, okay, we just want
You to labor.
just I mean the Labour Party itself was created for the people, for the working class.
Yeah.
To be able to have also a platform to express their political needs as well. So those visions are already living within us. But like I said earlier, they rank. And then people who wish to lead, will then acquire those needs, harvest it to create a vision that people can then plug in.
Okay.
They can be the people who say draft it, but as a living document, as a strategic document, but they are already living within us.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. And that's, basically, and also, kind of justifies the saying that, I commonly hear when people be like, the leadership is also from the people. So it's not like the leader was thrown, stone to earth from another place, and he just be like, okay, guys, what do you need? Like, ideally, the leader is supposed to be a part of the struggle of the people, and the vision is born out of that shared struggle.
Of the struggle or the lack of struggle.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so whether there's struggle or lack of struggle, but then the ultimate thing is that there is an ideal, there is something that it's more like when Martin Luther began to say, I have a dream that XYZ will happen. He was a part of that struggle himself, but not everyone could see the possibility he was seeing, and his disposition to leadership was, the integrity of his heart was solely around the fact that there is something he's saying that even if the people are not seeing, but this is how we actually coordinate the people because of a possibility that lies somewhere in the future. And that will lead me to my next question. So that means, and that's me asking really, so do we really need, because we've talked about leadership, we talked about vision and all of that. So when can a person be referred to as a leader? Is it after an appointment? Is it after people express some liking towards the person? Or is it when the person just feels like, like, I want to be a leader, And there are even songs about this. Everybody's ambition is to be one of the leaders. So, Mr. Kingsley, what do you think? When does a person become a leader?
Well, I think so when you're in a democratic government, everybody is a leader. I say that because the very fact that you
But they don't pay me my allowance.
well, so structures then come into play. But everyone under a democratic, rule, government is a leader in the sense that you have a responsibility to decide or to contribute to the outcome of who then becomes our representative. So, let's not. I think the challenge is that a lot of us have removed that reality from our own experience and outsourced it to people who are supposed to be representatives of us, right? Because at the end of the day, the same way the vision comes from the people and not the leader, because again, like you rightly stated, the vision is from the people to the degree that the leader is from the people. So except, like you said, Superman drops from the sky and tells us, if that's not the case, at least to the best of my knowledge, right? So it means that every one of us could be that representative. It's just really a function of have I, taken the time to build certain competencies? Have I taken the time to, just really go the extra mile? And again, I don't want to say this to say that they've done more work than other people. No, that's not the idea, right? But then it's just recognizing that the average Nigerian could, it's not something that is outside the reach of anybody, and that's the way it's supposed to be. As long as you meet the criteria that have been set. The Constitution, the whole idea of that is all of us came together to agree on this by virtue of the representatives that we've put there. So I think we need to be clear about that reality that in our own, because I think that's the reason why we find a lot of Nigerians missing out or not participating in the way they should participate. And I don't just mean voting. So for example, something as basic as don't dump trash in the drainage system. That's having a sense of leadership, but because we're not able to marry that responsibility and call that leadership is the reason why people will not act like a leader in that regard. And so they will just abdicate that responsibility to somebody else, and so they find themselves being or acting contrary to what is beneficial to the common good. So if I know that I am a leader, then the consciousness is heavy on me to understand that this very act is going against the common good. But because I've abdicated that role to somebody else to give me free-flowing water, keep my streets free of flooding, keep my gutters clean, keep me healthy, I can't see myself in that light, even though I am.
Okay, thank you very much. So essentially, it is that consciousness of the common good of everyone that produces leaders, and then it's the action you take, by just doing what you can within your own space, not necessarily, waiting for an appointment or waiting for, being elected as class captain before you start writing names of noisemakers, just deciding to keep quiet, because that's the right thing to do, is portraying leadership. Okay, so I would like for us to take this further a bit. So now we've talked about leadership, we talked about where vision comes from, we talked about what makes a person a leader. And then, of course, we are also, in the light of everything we've said, so now let's look at our society at large, and ask ourselves truly if what we see portrayed as leadership in society at large is actually consistent with what we've defined so far. So I allowed us to define it. So now let's honestly, just look ahead. So, and of course, no name calling, no putting anybody on the spotlight. But then, basically just really being able to drive this home and, saying like, this is not leadership, because a leader, would do better, or a leader, would behave better in this regard. So what are I would like for us to do this by basically defining a thing by defining what it is not. So I think that's the right way to go right now. So, and I would like to give a background. So oftentimes, and I've held a personal opinion myself, that if a person is so desperate to want to lead, they are probably not meant to lead, because looking at, in my experience, the greatest leaders, in history, were not people who tried to lead. They were just people who were so committed to a cause, to the point where they began to inspire other people. And the inspiration really comes from the fact that the so-called leader is able to portray that this is possible. Meaning, just like we said, the challenge is residing within, among the people. People know what they want, even though sometimes they can't define it. But whenever they see a person who seems like this guy, can actually make this thing work. And that guy sometimes is not necessarily the smartest guy in the clan, but it's just the guy who kind of has the ability to show people that we can actually do this. And it could be in the case of oppression, where a guy just stands up and be like, we can defeat these oppressors. And he's not the strongest army in his clan, but somehow he's able to lead, hundreds or thousands to war. And eventually, maybe he doesn't always end well. Maybe he doesn't always end well, but, we've seen cases of how things actually turn around. So, back to the question I'm trying to ask, and I want Mr. Taiwo to take that. So, if leadership comes with such weight of responsibility, where, failure really lies on you, because for you to take responsibility is not just looking at the bright side, that I'm taking responsibility for what will work. You're also looking at responsibility for what might not work. So when a person is so desperate to the point where they must lead, does that inspire confidence that that's a true leadership material?
Well, it depends. And it depends on the context of leadership that we're talking about. If it's about politics, we've discovered that a lot of times the best leaders were very unpopular with people. And in fact, for some leaders, even when they were in office, people didn't like them. but they became likable over time. People started looking back at the legacy and saying, when we look at our broad goals, this person took us closer to these broad goals. And so a lot of times we must be able to define also and unbundle it, that there are different types of leaders. There are leaders that are inspirational. Those leaders inspire you by oratory. They inspire you sometimes by their actions. There are other leaders that are servant leaders that will inspire you by just simply serving. They carry bag for you in the airport. They do different types of things. They become ushers. Yeah, they become ushers. They are very kind. There are other leaders that are wartime leaders. Look at example, for example, in UK, really there was Mr. Churchill, who, for the most part, wasn't a great administrator, but for the war period was fantastic because he was able to unite everybody for that common goal of surviving this war. So I don't think sometimes it's easy to define whether somebody is a good leader by how much desire they have for the office. I think political practice makes it difficult for you to not eventually desire an office. Because politics is you putting out yourself and saying, okay, I understand the problems and I know how to fix it. And sometimes that requires you fighting for it, which means proving to other people with different type of methods, whether by conversing, whether by campaigning, whether by agenda, propaganda, to campaign, to convince, by using different tricks in the book, to convince, to acquire votes. So sometimes it's difficult. It's very difficult to say that because somebody has a passion to lead, it should be judged. I think it should be judged instead on the results that it will have and on how much of those goals that the people should have or have. How much of those goals are we able to achieve? And sometimes it may even take us decades to understand the impact of leaders. So that's my
Okay, thank you, sir. And that makes a lot of sense given the fact that it's contextual, honestly. But then I would like to quickly ask a follow-up question, to Mr. Lopez. So, because the weight of leadership, and particularly use the concept of servant leadership. Servant leadership means that this is service. And I have a business partner who was talking about this from Finland, and he said, someone like, I think a legislator in his country, actually was going to be asked to resign or going to be prosecuted because he spent €100 above, his allocation, like 100 euros, like, above, like, and the question is, constituency was asking is, like, where were you going to? Where were you going that you're spending, like, you spent like this much, because they don't give them cars. You basically have to Uber. So his Uber budget got exceeded by 100. So when you look at the people you are, just 100, and we are saying just because, maybe I would say we are just a kind of people, but 100 euros. And imagine the next guy who is going to fill that office. Is he going to eagerly say, give me that position? I mean, like, when you are in that kind of, like, I don't think you want to embrace that chair, with your full chest, like they would say, give him, because that might not have been an intentional act, but it is public humiliation. Do you know what it means, like, you are being asked to resign because of 100 euros? Like do you get the point? So when you look at all of that, can we actually agree that sometimes the desperation towards, I must lead, or I must be in that office, is it really for service or for self-service?
So, it depends. I believe that there's a level at which you can see problem in a society, and you will be filled with the desperation to solve it. Like, that if we do not address this in the next few months, 1 year, few years, we are all going to literally die. Well, it's going downhill from here. And it seems like no one else is seeing the problem as you are. So there can be, at that particular point, there can be a sense of desperation, like, see, I can help you guys solve this problem, and you really want to. But oftentimes, the truth is, the desperation can often be a red flag. Do you see? So the question most times that we need to ask is, if the level of influence that people get from leadership is taking away the influence, the financial gain, how many of us will still willingly want to serve? If we'll note something, I always say that leadership, I think one of our guests already said that it starts kind of in the family unit. We tend to disregard leadership because that's why we think that when you call who wants to lead, most people feel they can't lead because we've been painted an image that says that there's just something about leadership. There's only a few of us that have it, but most of us are already leading in our homes, leading our classes. Exactly. You see, I tell people, if you note a group of three, just three people, wherever there are three people, or in a class or in a system, there is always a de facto leader. Nobody chooses, they didn't choose themselves, but there is always someone that the remaining two or the rest of the crowd defer to. Why? Because they listen. When there's a problem, they seem to always know how to solve it. They know how to gather people. They know how to diffuse situations. They know how to. And before you know, people are deferring to them. So you're in a class of 50 people and they're like, we need a class representative, and 15 hands, 20 hands are pointing to someone. Most times they are pissed. They don't even want the position. Do you see? But you can already see it in them that they are problem solvers. So in those situations, most of those people already have that ability to want to solve problems, help to solve problems. But there are also other people where they can do it. It's their passion. They really, you don't like them, but I mean, you know that they can be overbearing. But the thing is, they can also do it. So it actually depends. Many times it's a red flag, but oftentimes there's a level you will get to, and you will say that we need to solve this problem. We need to be there. Like this recent flooding that you were talking about, stakeholders, the coastal road issues, and all that. I knew that, and it's something I'm not afraid to say online, that it was rubbish that was being said. It's not, that wasn't what was happening. And I deliberately went for that conversation because I really wanted to know what was, because we cannot be blaming something as simple or as major as that on something that that just happened. So in situations like that, I felt I needed to go to lend my voice, because I'm like, we're talking of just an issue that has happened now, but I see this thing going downhill from here. So when you get to that, when people get to that point where they see that there is a problem, it's going to go downhill, we can be desperate and say, see, I must lead, I nominate myself, I choose myself as tribute. Yes, it can happen, it can be both ways. So desperation is not always a sign that, it's they are not fit to lead, or they have an ulterior motive. It always depends. It always depends.
Okay, thank you. And I like this, and because the essence of our conversation is to help us arrive at a better position where we can actually, because I would say this is one of the major issues when it comes to leadership globally, where you can't really tell who a true leader is until you give them the opportunity. And fortunately, democracy would take 4 years, but somehow that 4 years, it gets hard to, take back the opportunity after the 4th year, in certain cases. But then the thing is, how do you really then decipher, is this guy really for service or for self-service? Desperation is one red flag, and it is not the absolute red flag. But what are the other red flags that, okay, if you put 1, 2, 3, 4 together, I would say one of them would be, does this person even have a clear understanding of the problem they are trying to solve? I think that's one. And if they don't have a clear understanding of the problem they are trying to solve, do they have the tendency to actually get help and seek help to ensure, are they committed to the problem? So what are the other red flags we can actually look at to be like, no, this person is not a leader, this person is actually a scam, Yeah, because it's actually true, and it's not just about political leader. Even in the corporate world, you see people like there's a new opening in the office, there's a new this one in office, and you see people that be like they must be, and you can see that this person like you are not even meeting up with this your KPI, with this small office that they gave you, and you're asking for. Do you get the point? Meaning the person is just really thinking about the raise, thinking about maybe the additional card that they're going to add or the extra allowances, and not really thinking about the fact that the organization needs to move further. So what are the other red flags we can actually look at? And I just used desperation as a case, because for me desperation is a big one. I have my own disposition towards, when I say person, I say, like, why are you desperate? Calm down. Like, it's work you are chasing after like this. Do you get the point? And of course, there are, exceptional cases where it be like, if we don't do this, our children are in trouble. So someone just has to step up. Do you get the point? But in a lot of cases, that's not actually the case. It's not the case of, I'm coming here to solve this problem. And, we've seen how, in certain cases, you hear all the promises, and by the time the person, like, they are not even talking about those things, talking about those promises anymore, because there was never, any commitment to begin with. However, their own, their benefits from becoming, entering into that position is already coming. So, you have to sort yourselves out. So what are the other red flags we can look at?
Okay, so I agree with you. I do think that desperation is a major red flag. And I say this because, at least within our context, and I say this because I believe that there are other forms, and that's why I was saying that the very idea or the very notion that we think that until I get there before I can execute certain things, I don't think that is accurate. I think that there is power in things like advocacy. I think that there is power in things. So, for example, in your desperation, what have you been able to do whilst you're not in that office? Can we speak to, because if you say that I'm passionate about this thing, right? I'm passionate about, unemployment or whatever. How many people have you employed whilst you're not in government yet? And I said this with
you even own your cook.
You understand? I said this with some background because, so for example, there's a project that, we're working on now, and then it's a federal government initiative in quotes, and then they've given these targets. And in my mind, I'm like, but you as federal government, you've not employed this number of youths, so why do you, right? So is it just, so there are functions that gives you an opportunity to demonstrate what you could actually do if you're given that position. And to be very honest, I think that the system that we operate is a true test, because the people are also not blind. Just like she mentioned, to give the example of the classroom, right? Your fellow classmates have seen you demonstrate leadership traits, and they are now the ones clamoring for you to take up that position, right? So the system we operate actually allows for that type of expression, in the sense that, because we run a party system in terms of our, politics and democracy. So you have to run under a party. You can't just come as an individual. You have to set up a party, right? That party then has to nominate you as the consensus candidate. So we've seen instances where a candidate is unanimous, so there's nobody opposing that candidacy, right? So is that what has happened, in that instance? Or so I'm saying that there's all this machinery or mechanics that allows for us to really trust and see that really indeed you are the one that people really want, because we've seen you demonstrate this outside of office. And that's really true, because, like you said, the only way for us to really know if you're the chosen one, in quotes, is when you get there. However, in our instance, because we've seen examples in our own setting where someone has, been, and we still have examples as at present, I must get there, right? And let's also not remove the fact that the offices as they are right now are so alluring that I cannot but question your motives. Particularly when, I'm not very quick to trace your, private enterprise, that I can say, okay, I can rest assured that if it's because of money, you've already made it elsewhere. Can use the example of Donald Trump. He's been a billionaire, so it was difficult for anybody to say that somebody coming to power because of the money. You could fault him for other things, other allures of the office, but it wasn't about money. In our climb, it's really largely about that. So we trace that. Now, another red flag that I would say is not having a clear roadmap, or really just tangible competence that we can see and verify, because it's really leadership is track record. You were class captain in your primary school. What did you do? How did you administrate? You were head boy, in your secondary school. You were student union president in your university. You were local government chairman. How did you perform? So if we're not able to see your antecedents up until that point, then that's a red flag for me. You can't just spring out of nowhere. We don't know you, but because you have one political godfather, you're Gideon. So even go back to the Bible, Joshua and Caleb, it was because they were the ones that went there and saw that this was possible. And so therefore, the mantle of leadership rested on them very easily. Nobody else saw it. Okay, since you're the ones that see it, so lead us there.
They had the vision.
So that's really how I see representation. Okay, because the Israelites wanted that freedom, they wanted access, they wanted that land, but they were afraid that they could not, defeat the people on the other side. Somebody now says, look, it's possible, we can do it. Okay, no problem. You are the one that you see us winning this battle, or you lead us. Yeah. And then he proved himself.
And that's actually very profound because, it's more like the leader just became the guy who just knew it was possible. And clearly, he didn't really know how. Because himself had to be pumped up at some point, like be stronger. In other words, but you said we can take. Do you get but you said we can take over this, this city. But then now they are telling you be strong and courageous. So where was the courage that was, And it's more like because he was, they say heavy is the head that wears the crown. He was not the one wearing the crown, so he could, hide under Moses' shadow and be like, Moses is here now. We've seen his doings before. But then, and I'm just trying to emphasize the fact that the guy who could see it was the automatic candidate for leadership. So please.
And even more recent examples, Martin Luther King is also another example. I have a dream, right? Yeah. And that dream, the fulfillment of that, the climax of that was manifested when Obama became president, of the United States. So it really comes down to, look, what is that thing that you are seeing? Because everybody, the Black Americans wanted that equality. They wanted to end racism. So they needed somebody who could see it, lead them on that march, and we celebrate him for that. Mandela too, the same thing in South Africa. It was the same thing. He was in prison for that. And so when they said, okay, no problem, we'll give you the democracy.
I'm just laughing because people are seeing things nowadays, I'm just remembering, what a lot of people have been telling us that they are seeing. What some people have been telling us that, is scary stuff,
Yeah, but, the truth of the matter is that, I'm just coming from somewhere where they're talking about, the Danford, just making a joke of Danford drivers. They don't have, indicators. They don't have side mirrors, and then they ask the guy, so how do you know?
Feel it.
Well, I said you feel it. But the truth is, the people have these yearnings, and it's common. From time immemorial till date, everybody has that feeling of this is what we want. When somebody then comes up with a vision and says, look, I see, this is what I see. The people then say, okay, no problem. This thing that you see.
We like what you see.
We like what you see. Or you lead us there. That really is how I picture leadership. Now, so anything that contradicts that reality, I question. Whether it is desperation. Joshua was not desperate for leadership. He said, let us go quickly. Let's go now and take over the land. Yeah. So, Martin Luther, the same thing. Let's march. Let us really exercise. If you cannot crawl, you cannot fly, you run. If you cannot run, you walk. If you cannot walk, crawl. Just keep moving. And today, it's a reality. So desperation, red flag for me. Lack of competence, red flag.
Track record, no track record.
Lack of antecedent, red flag as well. Because you cannot. What are you coming there to do? What can we bank on? It's unfortunate that, in this day and age, where we are now, and I do think that whoever is in office presently, there are certain things that you've gotten right. Now, to the degree that right thing is beneficial to majority of us is where the question lies. So you might be servicing certain people might be pleased with your administration in quote, but is it favoring the majority of the people? So I just really stop at those three for now. Desperation, competence, antecedents.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's actually very profound. I would have said, can we just put our hands together? Yeah. So that's really great. And I like what you were saying about track record and what you said particularly about Joshua, because clearly Joshua could see But also we saw in the story of Joshua that he didn't have all the answers, clearly, because himself had, at some point, you saw that doubt began to kick in, particularly when the realization of the fact that now is the time to actually do that thing you said, that let's go and take this city, And that's exactly, what I was saying earlier about the moment when people are desperate, it's either they don't have an idea what they are trying to step into. Like, you don't know what, and, I used to say, I used to say it like, basically and laugh over it. Like, I've not seen anyone who actually goes into Aso Rock and came out younger. Like, as a matter of fact, I think the last PDP president is looking much younger now than he was when he was the president. Can we all agree on that? So because it's a lot of weight. And I hear that, even your sleep schedule, everything is messed up. So when the person says, is it that you don't mind? But then I've seen a president before in this same country who actually came out younger. Like, and of course I said no name calling, but, when I say, when people are so, I'm going, it's either because you have no idea or you already know what you want to go and do and you will not do the work because nobody embraces work. Like, nobody, except if the work is the kind of work that you can't basically do away from. So, and to speak to the other thing around, basically just being able to see. So is it possible for you as a leader to be seeing something that is valid, but then the populace is not actually interested in what you're seeing? So what does it mean to be a leader in that kind of situation? Where, you are saying, for example, and we've seen, even candidates will talk about their manifestos and all of that, and people will be like, that's not what I want, that's not what I want, job, that kind of something. And so is it possible that you have a true and a clear sense of where you need to get to, and then the people are not exactly interested in all of that? Not because what you are presenting to them isn't what they want, but somehow they can't define that as what they want. Now, I'll give you an example. I remember, for example, when Governor Fashola was governor in Lagos State, there were a lot of things he did that people didn't like at first, but with time it made sense. Do you get? So what's the life of a leader like in the sense where you actually have to lead the people that can't really relate with what you're seeing? So is there something you can do to bridge the gap between your understanding what you're seeing, and what they are not seeing? Is it necessary to even bridge that gap to begin with? And if you have to bridge that gap, how can you begin to do that? Mr. Taiwo.
Thank you. I think it depends on the severity of what you're doing. I think one of my red flags in leadership is somebody who makes us think that it's easy. That's one of my own red flags, personally. If the leader is campaigning and it's all about everything is going to be well, I'm going to fix everything. I only need 2 years to fix everything. That to me is a red flag. Because in most contexts, you can't fix everything. And the way politics is designed is that you fix some and then you move on. And when we are talking about Nigeria in our own context, just like what you said, because of the state of where Nigeria is concerned, a lot of what we need to do is repair, is surgery, and that is painful. Therefore, many of the things that leaders will do in our context will produce pain. And that's just the truth about it. And it's something that in our political history, I don't think we've really done. And we've gotten to a point where we think leaders are supposed to provide, always supposed to make us happy every time. And that is not correct. I said something earlier about people. I personally believe that the outcomes of the people in leadership reflects more about the people. I struggle to delineate people from their leaders, personally. That's why I said, when we say a leader is expressing the struggle of the people, I said he may also express the lack of struggle as well, if the people are disconnected.
The office of the citizens, yes. Like PDK would say.
Exactly. If the citizen is not participating, then the leader will acquire goals
by himself. As an independent contractor.
And serve those goals. And there's further, like I would say, if you don't participate in that process, then you also cannot control person. You can't control the outcomes you want because you can't use your votes as a mechanism to correct and chide. And so, when I see leaders a lot of time, I always look at the people. Very few times do you delineate people from the leaders. It's the same culture that they are coming from. And a lot of times they're just expressing how most of us would behave there. So, how does a leader go through that process you talk about? I think it's about communication. But again, communicating by what means. If this leader does not come via organic political process, then that message will not come down.
Nobody cares.
Let me explain what that means. For example, if you were not part of the process of people who determine who your local government chairman is, you have lost a seat in having a say
You get feedback.
in what happens in also getting feedback, in even demanding feedback.
Yeah.
If you refuse to have people who participate in party politics, then you can't nominate delegates. So you also don't have a say in selecting. So when you have citizens that are completely detached from the political life, when I say complete, it means that you don't have any parties, you hardly vote, local governments are not interested, you don't know what happens in your ward. You are just simply somebody who expects service. Number one, I'm not sure you'll be able to bring your goals to the leader. Number two, I'm not sure the leader will have any compulsion to follow your goals. Number three, I'm not sure the leader will care about communicating those goals, because if you are not connected to the process, you can't opt in.
You are not even subscribed to their channel.
And if you can't opt in, it doesn't have any fear for you. So that's how I see it. So when a lot of times leaders, to be very honest, don't care so much because it doesn't cost them a lot.
The consequence of not.
There are no consequences for poor communication, no consequences for certain habits. So why should they care? So we need to get into that process and be fully participatory with it. So much that you can control behavior, you can correct. That's how it works. If the season is not complete and that office is not open for season, then there's no mechanism to connect to the executive. There's no way. And I think in our experience, I think that is very true. There's a disconnect, and a lot of times they are so far from us that they don't care.
Yeah, and that's actually very, very true, because while he was talking about it, I'm just thinking about, like a standard customer, relations, pipeline, where imagine building a product and your customers can't actually talk to you. Do you get it? Imagine maybe like an MTN without, a 180 line, or imagine, what's it called? Which are like basically a company running and your customers can't give you feedback. Only a few companies can actually get away with that. But then I think politics is like, politics and leadership is like that, where, if you are supposed to be doing this in the service of the people, you can't afford not to hear from them. You can't afford not to be able to communicate to them. Sometimes you hear from some of our providers, we are going to be having maintenance between so period,
Sorry to stop you. They communicate, but they communicate to people that have opened that line. So when they are in office, they are serving certain, like you said, certain goals. And those goals are often served to people who can control their career, who can control their lifetime, who can control things they do. So, is that, are we participating? We may place a demand on people and say, as a leader, try to do this. The human, in my opinion, the human intellect, or should I say the human behavior to me is not wired that way. I think the system must be top down. We spoke about Finland. The Scandinavians are really serious people. Individually, the average teacher and the average minister literally behave the same way. So that country has a type of people, and so they produce that type of leader. It's not that leaders simply find, and when you say people don't want to lead that kind of country, no, they want to lead because they can all do that. It's not the super humans that are doing that. It's the average citizen that's doing it. And when they get there, they behave as average citizens. So it's the type of people that produces that type of leader. So I think when I see our leadership, I always ask questions about what type of people are we producing.
Okay, so can you then refer to yourself as a true leader, not caring about the feedback from the people you actually are supposed to be in service of? Like, here's what I'm saying with the analogy I was using earlier. Like, imagine saying like for example, like most fintechs, you say we are banking the unbanked, but yet your app does not even run on any Android less than version 16. How are you the unbanked don't use they don't use the high tier Android, and you're banking the unbanked. Like, how are you supposed to be banking the unbanked when most of the people you are talking about don't actually have smartphones, and yet you say banking the unbanked? That's what you are saying all over YouTube and channels, TV interviews. So what I'm saying in essence is can you actually refer to, can you spotlight true leadership in a sense where feedback really doesn't even matter? More like, and it's not in a case, because I think, as a matter of fact, I got tired of, panel sessions when it comes to political leadership in Nigeria, because I think, if you hear the ideas, like the ideas that, have gone down on panel sessions like this one, you know that we are not supposed to be. For example, when I was in, I think, year 2 in university, we had this, what's it called, visitation from South Korea, and they basically shared their entire developmental pipeline. How that they started them manufacturing steel because they knew that was the foundation for industrialization, and while they were doing that, concurrently they sent their young people abroad to go and study how to actually make the things that made the developed world work. And they shared out of this pipeline. And one of the questions I remember the students asked at the end of the session was, have you communicated these things to our leaders? And they said, why not? They said, since year 2000, they've shared this whole thing. And the point I'm trying to make is, can you even be in the serious business of leadership when the bottom line doesn't really matter to you? Except if your KPI as a leader really doesn't depend on them. But a true leader actually measures his success by the people he claims to serve. And I don't know how true this is, but I heard that, the Crown Prince of Dubai one time said, when he was asked by one of the first world leaders, like, why are you in such a hurry? Trying to build things very quickly, like if you want to build this, in a few years, it's already done. I think it was Dr. Fada was talking about that. I can't remember particularly. And he said, if my people can have it today, why should they wait for 20 years? Do you get? So I think what we are looking at here is a non-people-centric leadership, because if it's a people-centric leadership, then the people's feedback will matter. Do you agree with me?
Let me just say, when we say people, what do we mean by true leadership? Because the person who we don't like was voted by some people, and if you look at behind him, he has followership. So are we saying those people are not people? They are people as well. We may not agree from our own standpoint, maybe based on what we know, but those people have followership, and those people look to them as leaders, and for some reason they keep them in office. So again, and politics, democracy plays about who has majority. So, and it's a very it's a painful system, but that's the way. So for those people, those are their heroes. They may not be for us, but those are their heroes.
Okay.
Them, they are true leaders.
Okay, I think the conversation is getting interesting now, and I'm just going to go all in now. So if you say those are the people, and I want us to hold on to that, and then by those people's metrics, they are good leaders. So isn't that opportunistic, that you take advantage of people's ignorance, their lack of exposure of what true leadership should be, and you serve them what they think they deserve as against what they truly deserve? Can we call that true leadership?
Well, maybe you answer, but I would say that the way the system goes is if...
No, we are not defining the Nigerian system. We are defining leadership as it should be. Do you get my point? Like, it's leadership as it should be. We're not talking about Nigerian. We're not talking about Ghanaian leadership. We're not talking about American leadership. We're talking about leadership.
Say that if the majority of the people of the nation looked at a particular person with certain habits and said that this is the person we want to be, that is the outcome that they deserve.
No. So I don't think it's about. Okay, okay. Let me use the greatest leader that ever lived, Jesus. Like, did he give us what we deserve? Like that's the question. Like, if you were to go by the kind of, because people wanted, as far as you could tell, they wanted bread and fish. They didn't want to be saved. They they will not go to hell, but just, can you multiply bread today? Can you multiply bread every day and never die? If Jesus had asked them, they would have said yes. Just give us free bread, free fish in a picnic party, and we'll be fine. Do you get the point? But then that wasn't what he did. And I think that's a true expression of leadership, because he could go into heated conversations with the people and even have serious arguments with them, to the point where they would rather kill him than continue listening to him. But he was so committed to the ideal that he would not settle for what they think they wanted. He would give them what they needed. So, Mr. Kingsley, it seems like you have something to say.
Yeah, also, I think I understand his point of view.
It's totally valid, actually.
It's very, very difficult to not think of leadership and politics without localizing it to our context. Now, the danger...
May God heal us.
Amen. The danger, however, I said the danger is that the Nigerian predicament is so bad that it keeps depreciating, and then it's now a question of, it's like chicken and egg situation, which one came first? Because every leader will say is a function of the society. The society will say is a function of the leaders. So who is correct? Who is wrong? So the problem is, I know the question you're actually about, how does a leader now give the people what they actually need versus what they might be clamoring for? So if there's that disconnect, how do you bridge that gap? And he said something that I think, begins to answer that question, which is understanding, and even the Bible gives us a reference when God says, this land we're about to occupy, I will chase away the people slowly.
Gradually.
Yeah, because if I do that, the beast will, exactly. So there is a sensibility in understanding and being able to, translate that actual need for the people without disregarding what the immediate pain points are. The typical, and if we, again, let us not, when we now bring it back to our local context, I don't want us to make light of the Nigerian situation where we know that really and truly, we now begin to argue whether our elections are truly free and fair. Because we begin to disintegrate that whole narrative of the House people that voted for him, his majority, it begins to collapse on itself. So we'll pack that one to one side. We can now speak to, how do we then go about this? The truth is, anybody who really, that God is going to use to change this nation, is going to have to take very, very bold decisions.
That's to be a calling.
He's going to take very, very bold decisions. We would definitely not be liked by everybody, even though he's the Messiah. Jesus was a classic example. This was, a man that was sent to save the whole world, yet they killed him. So who are you that you would think that, yes, you really are the one to bring light to this nation, but everybody must love you first? No, I don't think that is quite the case. So it does two things for us. It helps us to not overly villainize someone because their, approach or whatever it is they're doing is pinching us at the moment. So to that extent, I agree with him where it will look like, oh, because this person is looking obviously, for lack of a better description, bad or evil or that kind of thing, you think, oh, it is not the goodwill for us. It might just be part of that process that is breaking us away. However, we have to then put that reality under the light of what you said, global practice, best practice, And for me, what I would recommend is whoever is there, are they, whatever they are doing, is it helping us to establish healthy institutions? Because institutions are about lead people or leaders, right? Or are you weakening these systems further? So anybody, whatever it is, even if it's, removing subsidy or whatever, which are very, very painful measures in the interim, but nobody you would speak to from an intellectual standpoint to tell you that those are not, in quotes, the way to go. The government cannot, we're not a socialist economy, the government cannot fund everything that pertains to human life and, living, right? People have to pay for certain things. However, are you also, ensuring that people are able to earn a living to be, just before we came up, we were talking about what could likely come. They've done fuel now and petrol and, will likely enter the power sector. So, there's a joke about the present administration's campaign for the next election saying expect more. And we're like,
I've not seen
brace yourself. Brace yourself for what's coming. So, there is that, for to not to be biased about whatever it is that we're saying, but be able to x-ray every measure in the light of, is it really good in terms of building a stronger economy, right, or not? Those are the questions that we should really be having. But it should not stop us also, which is where I agree with him, and that's where I sort of would pitch my tent and forever till tomorrow, the kingdom comes, say, look, we need to emphasize a lot more. People, we as Nigerians have to take back our power as leaders. Even the average person who feels that there's not much they can do, you can vote. As long as you're above 18, you can hold a PVC, go to the polling unit and vote, right? That consciousness is decaying, we're losing it gradually, and what it's essentially doing is that it's just making it difficult for whoever we want to truly get there to actually get there, So it is really, is it possible? Yes, for there to be a disconnect between what the people want and the vision that the leader sees. Definitely, more so in Nigeria's case, to be very honest, because of how bad things have gotten. So we now need to gradually bridge that gap. And to be very honest, it may not happen in one administration. That's just really my solution.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So while you were speaking, it just occurred to me that we also need to, kind of move on to this particular, part of the conversation. And of course, I still hold my position when it comes, because truly, if we have a definition problem that we don't fix, we don't expect so much change, because every subsequent initiative, every subsequent action we take will still be based on a flawed foundation. And if the foundation be shaken, even the righteous, basically have questions, the rhetorical questions that they can't, they won't find answers to. Because if we can be, the essence of our conversation is to be able to define things as they should be, not as they are. And that being said, so what would you call, the yardstick of a true leader? And let's say if a leader steps into position or even a non-positional role, because we've established that it's not really about the position, when can we say that the leader, has succeeded in terms of what they set out to do? Is it when it is accomplished, or is it when, and maybe let me not go on to start answering the question by, several extra, context, but when can we say a leader, has actually succeeded? At what point can we say, okay, this leader has succeeded? Do you want to go for that?
I will say that it is when, let me first define what I think leadership in that context. A leader is more so, or is at its core, at his or her core, a mediator that stands in the gap for a people and the system they serve for the good of both. So you can have a people might want something that is good for them but may not be good for the system. The system might be requiring something from them that is not, or might be requiring something that is not good for them. A leader must be able to balance both. An example I usually like to use is Moses. Moses was when I say a very good leader. He's a prototype of a very, very good leader. Moses stood consistently in the gap between God and God's people, speaking for the people to God and speaking to the people for what God said. And many times he was standing in the gap, even facing God, like, you have to pass through me. When these people...
Over my dead body.
Exactly. When these people, when what they needed was justice. I notice it's most of the conversation we've been saying things like, people usually know what they want. It's not true. People do not always know what they want. Sometimes they feel they know, but they do not know. Most times what people feel they know, or what they feel they want, is not exactly, they know what they don't want, but they cannot explain to you what they truly want. Most people say, oh, there's oppression. We don't want the oppression and all that, but
you can't imagine a world without
freedom.
oppression.
Yes, they say they want freedom, but they don't know what it looks like. Ask them what they don't know, but they know that this is oppression and they want it to stop, but they can't define to you what freedom will look like. So they don't exactly know what it is, but they know what they don't like right now. Do you see? So
it's like trying to shop for shoes.
Exactly.
You don't know the shoe you want, but you know the ones
exactly.
you don't
you know the one you don't want. They are bringing, like, you don't know yet, like, but you are like, why will you bring this to me? It can be like that. So a leader has to be someone who can mediate and stand in the gap, can stand for the people, can stand for us there, and communicate our needs, and also get back to us. So it's not always when the goal of what we want has been achieved, but it is when we can clearly see that we saw this leader fighting for us in National Assembly, and let's know that they didn't listen to him, but that he spoke. We've seen it many times. We've seen a few of them, clamoring for things for their constituency, and that one, we can tell that we heard him when he was fighting for it, they just didn't give it to him. Do you see? It is not when we finally see what he has said that we say that he was a good leader. It is when we know that all the burdens, all the things we said we needed, all the things we said we wanted, all the things we said would be for the betterment of our community, our society, our family, he communicated it to the system that could have given it to us. That is when we will say that a leader has really done his work.
Yeah, and thank you very much. That actually makes a lot of sense, and it then kind of just validates what I was thinking while you were talking, that the true hallmark of a leader isn't just in how much they are able to accomplish, because you hear that a lot of times when people say what they will do, but it doesn't always begin. It's not really about what you can do, what you can, and that's why when we look at, let's take another glance, although we say we don't want to be taking a glance at our own political, but let's take a glance at our political system. Why do you have a lot of projects that just got terminated after an administration? Because someone wants something to be in their name. They want to be they don't want to complete something that someone else started, because it's going to be attributed to them. So it's more like so it's not really about accomplishment for the leader. It's about creating that system that ensures that continuous conversation, that dialogue between the people and the system continues to happen. And as a matter of fact, one of the measurements or metrics for a great leader is your succession plan. Not necessarily, what you want to do in 8 years, because people talk a lot about 4 years. 4 years is actually a lot of time, And if a person can't see beyond 4 years, perhaps that's another red flag that we should be looking at. Like, well, you can't see beyond 4 years. We really, when you're saying like you will do it fast in 2 years, and doesn't. Of course, some things can happen fast. We can see that, for example, in a state like Abia State, we see that a lot of things are moving fast, because someone just wants to execute as quickly as possible. But yet, there are still things that take time. And a true leader understands the place of process and understand the truth that what you've signed up to solve is a problem that was there before you and probably will be there after you. So you cannot just you can't streamline your solution to your lifetime in office, because once you're out of office, then what happens? You get, so the greatest hallmark of leadership is that succession plan, and it might not necessarily be succession in terms of being able to control the next person coming in, but at least creating a system that forces that person to comply to that that same order of process. That makes a lot of sense. So I would like to ask Mr. Kingsley this particular question. So now we've seen that the greatest accomplishment of a leader is not necessarily his accomplishments, but what the system is able to put in place for the benefit of the people and the benefit of the system. And that's something that we can actually I think that's a profound way to actually put it: the people and the system, because people don't want what the system wants most of the time. Nobody wants to pay for example, and maybe we don't have that here. Nobody wants to pay that extra fine because you were driving a car with an expired tire. Nobody wants to pay, that fine because you parked in the wrong place. Nobody really wants that. You need all the money you can get, So nobody wants that, but then the system says that's what you should do. So my question would be, when we look at our political structure, we've seen cases where a lot of people will, ask a leader things like, give us your manifesto, give us your manifesto. What's the most important thing? Is it what the leader has to define, or something that is more holistic in terms of what the collective actually needs. And let me put it out. For example, Mr. Daiwo said something around, a leader can actually, look at the people and see what they want and decides to give it to them. Okay, you people want free healthcare, and he just gives them free healthcare, and then he doesn't do anything again. Like, we said we were going to give you free healthcare, and now, although you have to stay there for 6 hours before they attend to you, I just drive to but it's free. So, like, should we be thinking about vision from an individualistic perspective or from a more national or nationwide perspective, if I put it that way? Like, what should be the anchor for the vision of a people? And that's leaning on the back of that thesis that it's not really about what what you ought to do. It's supposed to be something much more bigger. So, what do you think when people say, give us your manifesto? What should we be looking at in the manifesto? What exactly should we be looking out for?
Okay, so the way I will respond to this question is this. Ideally, this question would suffice in media and advertising. We essentially run two types of campaigns, tactical and thematic. Now, tactical is more urgent, like there's something, we just won an award, or there's a crisis, we need to tackle that crisis. Thematic is more long-term. So for example, MTN's campaign is a thematic one, so it can run for exactly. Now, I'll give you an example of, so if I translate that to politics or, government, when there was civil war in Rwanda and there was the clash between the Hutu and Tutsi, that kind of situation, what Paul Kagame did was more or less, you can't be talking vision, at that point. There is fire on the mountain at that point in time, right? And, so he did what he had to do, sanitize the system, and reaping the rewards of that. Now he unified the country, to a large extent. However, that's one of the reasons why I said that much of what we are hoping for in Nigeria, I honestly don't think it can happen in one administration. Because think of how long Kagame has been in office in Rwanda. There is just something that consistency. Well, not necessarily a king, but again, I may be faulted for this, right? Again, I'm not like the biggest fan, but to be very honest, the system that Lagos State has run, I dare say is one of the biggest contributors to the advancement that we've seen compared to other states. People attribute it to because it was the seat of government initially, that kind of thing. But look at Abuja. Like if you remove the capital from Abuja, would it be like Lagos? You understand? So we begin to look at Abia. The capital is not there, but look at the advancement that's going on there. So imagine if, Alex Otti is given more time. What could that city be? So it now begins to almost make it look like I'm saying that the vision is individual, not national. But let's remember where we said initially that the leader comes from the people. So whatever seems to be individualistic is not, it's not alien to the people. It's still something that, because that's the reason why he can be celebrated. Because whatever the strategy he used, trust me, it wasn't everybody that liked it in the beginning. It wasn't. But today, it is named, they're calling, they're celebrating him now. Why? Because, he took those decisions. So yes, it might look like, because again, what he's saying, not everybody is saying it, but he believes it strongly, receives power, from God to be able to pursue those things, right? Also receives the kind of support. But I dare say that we are in a tactical situation now. There's crisis in the country. It's not all about bombs and, gunshots everywhere before you know that there's problem. But we're in a problem, and we need to address it tactically first and foremost. Well, that's why it's difficult for anybody to drive any vision agenda. If you come on that mandate, you most likely will not win the election. So they will always go for the person who can solve more immediate problems.
It's supposed to be like a roadmap, like in, say, project management, where, okay, this is step number 1. Let's solve this. But then we have, say, 50 other steps ahead.
Have you noticed now that there's less, manifesto is almost not, it's not common as it used to be before. People are caring less. That's why I'm saying that we are in quote crisis situation. So
People need something more practical.
Yes. What was Sanwo-Olu's manifesto? But he won. This is Lagos where at least things are somewhat saner, right? Then think of people in the north where there's actual, tension. Do you think they're caring about, all they want to hear is, can you secure us? Can you secure our lives and properties? That's really the core that they want to hear.
Item number one.
So they don't care for, don't give me good road first. Just make sure that people stop shooting at me and killing my family members.
Not even free healthcare.
Not free healthcare. No, it's who's alive that will go for healthcare now. But if you shoot me tomorrow, no amount of healthcare can.
Or it might be in the war that they just come,
So I think at this point, we will get to that point where we would now rely on the strength of your manifesto. But right now, we need to stop the bleeding.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So I think we've come to, we can now begin to tie this together. So I would like to ask, Mr. Tai will just share, and of course we've said a lot, and I believe it's actually been a very insightful session. So I would like for you to kind of just, in a few words, if you were to advise someone who is, or a leader, and what would be the piece of advice you would give to them in terms of what they need to know, and then also to give them a glimpse of what they are stepping into. And I would like, we all should just speak to that effect. Like, what would you advise a leader? As a matter of fact, if you were to, like, either ways. So let's say you have the ears of, for example, the president of Nigeria today, and I'm not saying, talking about reforms, man, I'm just talking about generally, basically speaking to someone who is leading from the heart. What are the things that you would like to, just say to him?
I would say that spend time understanding the problem and then look for the right talent to do it. Leadership is not simply also doing the work yourself, but being able to recognize other people that can do the work for you. So, coordination. So people are not even great at doing the work. It's about looking for people who will do the work. And that's the first thing I would say, build a team. And for people who want to come into leadership, I would say, don't start from the biggest position. Start from your neighborhood. That's a good way to start.
What's let's take Mr. Kingsley.
One phrase, don't forget what you said you are going to do for the people when you get into office. That's it.
Remember the road that will lead you home. Okay, Mrs. Dolo, please.
I would say that they should know what the problem is. They should really know what the problem is, and they should know how to solve it. Like you said, if you don't know how to solve it, delegate. Delegate it to people who know how to solve it, who know the direction you are going and you have shown the vision. Just like Moses, Caleb and Joshua. We need Caleb's and Joshua's, especially those of us who are leaders. Yeah.
Yeah, the 80 elders.
Yeah. We need them so that when we get to, or we're heading to that promised land, because there will always be giants there that we have to fight, that will have those people who will be telling us we can take the land, even though there are giants there, we can take the land.
Yeah.
And people whom we will delegate to, who will be able to stand, because like Moses, you can't always have your hand up.
Yeah.
You need people to help you raise it many times. So.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we've come to a very insightful close of this month's Nation Building Theater. Thank you very much to our, panelists. It's been a wonderful, conversation. And to our online audience, thank you for joining us. Do have a wonderful rest of your day.